Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar as we take a look at the latest edition of Green Building in South Africa, a guide to cost and trends. I'm Anelisa Keke, the sustainability professional, and we're joined this morning by Dr. Danie Hoffman, the lead researcher for the Department of Construction Economics at the University of Pretoria, as well as a panel of industry experts, which includes Eileen, the Vice President of Client Coverage at MSCI South Africa, Georgina Smit, the GBCSA's Executive Director and Head of Technical, and Julie Emmrich, the Sustainable Finance Lead for the World Green Building Council. To our audience, just some quick housekeeping. I would like to encourage you to leave comments and ask questions in the chat option provided, and I'll be happy to share those with the panel during our Q&A at the end of the webinar. I know some of you have my number and you like to send me questions via WhatsApp. I would like to ask you not to do that and to rather just use the chat function. The Green Building in South Africa, a guide to cost and trends study, is a series of reports using empirical data from real-world projects to create a picture of the costs of greening a building and how the costs change over time. This core research is the result of a partnership between the Association of South African Quantity Surveyors, or ASAQS, the University of Pretoria, and the GBCSA. Each partner contributes either a unique methodology, dataset, or research hours to the creation of this deeply collaborative study. To welcome us to this event today is Nolubabalo Tsolo, who is the CEO of the ASAQS. Just a little bit about Nolubabalo. She is a seasoned professional quantity surveyor with over 17 years of experience in South Africa's built environment sector. Nolubabalo currently serves as the Executive Director of the Association of South African Quantity Surveyors, or ASAQS, where she leads strategic initiatives to enhance the visibility, influence, and value of the profession within the industry and society at large. Nolubabalo, please turn on your camera and give us a few words from your side. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning, colleagues, partners, panelists, and attendees. It is a privilege to be with you today at the launch of the fourth edition of Green Building in South Africa, a guide to cost and trends. When the very first booklet was launched in 2016, it marked a turning point. Until then, there was little reliable information about the true cost of green building in South Africa. Many believed sustainability was simply too expensive, and this perception held back innovation and adoption. Over the years, each new edition has chipped away at that perception by providing evidence, insights, and lessons from real projects across the country. Today, as we celebrate the 2025 edition, we can confidently say green buildings are not a luxury. They are a smart, viable, and essential part of our future. What makes this journey remarkable is how much the industry has matured. From being seen as a niche concept, green building is now recognized as a good business, good for people, and good for the planet. Developers, financiers, and professionals can move forward with confidence, knowing that sustainable choices are backed by real-world results and long-term benefits. This booklet is more than just a research report. It is a roadmap of how we design, cost, and deliver buildings that are ready for the future. It empowers decision makers with the confidence to choose green, and it strengthens the business case for sustainable construction in South Africa. As ASAQS, we are proud to be a partner in this important work. Our profession, quantity surveying, is at the heart of responsible decision making. We are not just measuring costs, we are helping to shape value. And in the context of green building, that means providing that financial responsibility and environmental responsibility can and must go hand in hand. Of course, a publication like this does not just happen on its own. It is as a result of true collaboration. On behalf of ASAQS, I want to sincerely thank our partners, Green Building Council of South Africa and the University of Pretoria, for their continued leadership and research excellence. MSCI for providing valuable data that strengthens the credibility and reach of this work. The many sponsors who have supported this publication, and everyone who has contributed their expertise and shared project insights and allowed their projects to be studied. Your combined effort has made this booklet possible, and your commitment ensures it continues to be a trusted and widely used resource in our sector. For me, having joined SAQS earlier this year, it is deeply inspiring to step into an organization that has been part of this journey from the very beginning. I see this booklet not as a reflection of the past years of research, but as a call to action for the future. As we look ahead, we need to know that the built environment has a critical role to play in addressing climate change and in building more resilient South Africa. This booklet is a reminder that every decision we make, from design to construction to operation, can bring us closer to the future. So as we launch the 2025 edition today, let us celebrate how far we have come, and let us also commit ourselves to going further. Let us use this knowledge to break down barriers, to inspire confidence, and to ensure that green building becomes the standard, not the exception. Thank you once again to all who have been part of this journey, and I look forward to the conversations that will follow today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nolu Babalo. Now let's proceed and kick off with the main presentation, which will be delivered by Dr. Danie Hoffman. So Dr. Hoffman holds a PhD, an MSc QS, and an MBA from the University of Pretoria. He has 27 years of industry experience as a PRQS. In 2007, he was appointed as the program leader for quantity surveying at the University of Pretoria. In 2014, he became the lead academic researcher of the GBCSA ASAQS UP joint study on the cost and trends of green buildings. Danie has published more than 45 articles and papers in journals and at international and national conferences, and is still continuing his research with the GBCSA and the ASAQS. Danie, over to you.
Thank you, Anelisa. Thank you very much for this introduction, and thank you for the team that's with me in the room. We are very excited indeed to delve into this latest 2025 edition of our long-term study. The study has already been introduced. Thank you very much for that, Anelisa. It is maybe just good at the start, before we go into the detail, that this study focuses on office buildings, new office buildings certified by the GBCSA as 4, 5 or 6 star buildings, both design and as built. They've all used the Green Star SA new build version 1 or version 1.1 rating tool. And the total population of buildings that qualify for these specifications count up to 199 buildings to date, owned by 108 different companies. All right, so if you can start looking at the aims of what we're trying to do in this 2025 edition. Firstly, in part 1, you'll find a description of the portion or percentage of projects budgets that was impacted by green building design. We call it the green building penetration. Then in part 2, we look and to describe the green building cost premium of certified new office buildings in quite a lot of detail. We don't have all that much detail in this report due to time constraints, but the full booklet is available from both the ASAQS and GBCSA websites after this presentation, and please have a look at that. Part 3 is where we highlight the research findings of MSCI on South Africa Green Annual Property Index on the performance of green buildings. And then in part 4, a new bit that we've added is, and we're very excited about that, we use this above industry data to build and propose a business case for green building. In pursuing this findings, you also have to understand that, again, we don't have the detail and the time to explain all of this, but we also look at various aspects or features of green buildings to understand how green building cost works. We look at things like certification level 4, 5, and 6 star. We look at the location of the buildings. We look at their size. We look at the base building cost. We look at vertical facade ratio, certification date, and how much we matured over time. We'll talk about that later. We'll talk about the tenant mix. We look at that. We look at certification rating, and we also look at the 9 categories of the Green Star tool and where these cost premium money was chased, and how much of these categories secured the funding that we had to spend to enable the buildings to be certified as green buildings. So the key findings that we had was the following. Firstly, the main finding, and we're very excited about that, is that the average green building cost premium is now down to only 3.43%. And you must remember that is now data from 2009 right up to 2024. It was 5.95 when we did our first report, and it was declining to 3.9, 3.63 in 2022, and now sitting at 3.43%. But what is as exciting for us is the second finding, that the period average, that means all the latest buildings that we've had from 2022 to 2024 at a cost premium of only 2.4%. So you can see the trend is clearly going down, and we've listed there the percentages for each of those periods that we've studied. 5.95 for the first period up to 2014. The data 2015 to 2018 at 3.49%, and then the data from 2019 to 2022 at 3.15%. And as I say, the latest data we've added was only sitting at 2.4%. The average green building penetration currently is sitting at 39.2%. But remember again, that's all the data from the beginning up to 2009 up to now. That trend is going down, and recently, the last couple of years, was trending below 30%. So it is clear that we are finding it easier and quicker ways to do green building, and maybe the version 2 tool will come into our discussion later today. And the last finding was, in our business case, it is very likely that green certified office buildings is outperforming non-certified buildings by more than 60% when you look at metrics like return on investment, margin return, and capitalized value. So if we can then start and delve into more specifics of our findings, part one is all about the green design penetration. And that means how much of the budgets of these projects were actually addressed and touched by the green design that they had to follow and to propose to secure their certifications. You can see there that the average green design penetration we've already touched on was 39.2% at the moment. It was previously about 40%, but currently during the period 2022-2024, actually before that, it starts to drop below 30%, which tells you the industry is maturing. We're learning quite quickly to do things quicker and neater and more efficiently regarding budget and so on. And it is becoming increasingly easy for experienced professionals to lead projects to certification without incurring that much of a cost premium as it was before. The graph also clearly shows where we started 42%, we're now sitting at 28%. That middle line on the graph, you can see how the penetration percentage is dropping. And again, the version 2 tool that's of the GBCSA may come into this discussion later on. We can then move to part 2, where we look at the green building cost premium, and that's where a lot of our energy goes into, because that was the main aim of starting the study, is to see how much more does green building actually cost. So there's our findings. We've already told you that the total premium is sitting at 3.43%. But if you look at the top, it has been declining ever since we started. There was never once a finding of the 4 findings to date where we had a leveling out or an increasing. It was a constant declining of the average percentage. And there we've listed all the findings, all the average periods from 2009 up to 2014. It was sitting at 5.95%. Again, all the data 2009 up to 2018, it was dropped to 3.9%. When we reached 2021, it dropped to 3.63%. And now the data in this report is up to December 2024, and the current green building cost premium has dropped to 3.43%. That is also explained in the table on the top right hand of the slide. But in this instance, we focus on the specific periods. That's what means 2009 to 2014, sitting at 5.95. Then the next period, 2015, 2018, it dropped to 3.43% for that period only. The 2019, 2021, it dropped to 3.15%. And the last period, the latest one, 2022 to 2024, first time we dipped below the 3% and solidly so at 2.4%. And that is what our graph displays so clearly, that middle line trending down from 5.95% all the way down to where we now sit at a measly 2.4% of additional cost. The next slide just shows year-on-year change. So you can see on the x-axis, it shows all the data from 2020 right to 2021. And again, look at the middle graph, the purple line going down, with it indicating correlation line, the dotted line, how it's trending down all the time, starting at about 6% on the left, ending at about 2.47%, which clearly confirms that this is a constant finding that we have. We will have to see what the version 2 tool does. It will be very interesting to see. We expect a little bit of a change in here because the tool works differently and asks deeper questions, I think, of us, pushing us closer to net zero and net positive buildings. But that is something that only the future will learn. And then we get to part 3, and I think this is maybe where my colleague Eileen from MSCI can come in and talk us through part 3.
Certainly. Thanks very much, Danie, and thank you to everybody for joining this call this morning. So part 3 in the booklet deals with or goes through the MSCI Green Index and research that we've done around the investment returns that are derived from green certified buildings versus non-certified buildings. We've been doing this research back to 2017, so we've got a number of years of history now, and consistently throughout that history, we have shown that green buildings render a better return than what non-green, or should I say certified buildings, give us a better return than non-certified buildings. Our sample has changed somewhat over the time period because we have seen more buildings being certified, and so we sort of see an even number of certified offices versus non-certified offices. I should also say that when we look at this, we're looking specifically at prime and A-grade offices versus certified versus non-certified. So we're not muddying the water by putting B and C grade offices versus prime offices. It is a like-for-like sample. What we have found throughout this process is that not only are the investment returns better for those certified buildings, but we've also seen much stronger fundamentals come through on a consistent basis. And what I mean by that is we've generally seen lower vacancies in the certified buildings. We've seen higher returns, higher net income growth numbers coming through, as well as better cost to income ratios. So I'm going to go on to, if you go to the next slide for me, please. So I'm just highlighting 5 key metrics. The booklet deals with a whole lot more, it gives into a whole lot more detail, and it goes into a whole lot of history so that you can see what these trends are over time. And much like the cost of green showed that the cost of building green is coming down, we have also consistently seen over time that there is an investment premium on those certified offices compared to non-certified offices. This is just showing you 2024 results that you're looking at the moment. So you can see that total return number being higher. If we break that down into the components of total return, which is income return or yield, as well as capital growth, on both sides, we see better capital growth consistently, even in times where we know offices have gone through the ringer sort of in the last 5 or 6 years. We've seen better returns and better capital growth off of those certified offices than the non-certified offices. And at the same time, we've also seen higher income return off of those offices. In other words, that relationship between the income that's generated from those assets and the capital employed in those assets is also higher. 2024, we saw lower vacancies, which talks to tenant demand. So there is a higher demand for these green certified assets. I think often when we speak anecdotally to the brokers and the guys that are letting these assets out, it is often an easier deal to make when you have the certification in place, and it's often a good lever for them to be able to pull. We also see that net operating income is higher. This is not necessarily income that is earned. No, let me say, this is not necessarily a premium on rental that we can see in every green certified building versus non-green certified buildings. So I urge you not to read it like that. When we're talking about net income, it's the actual income that drops out of the asset after all of the expenses, and that can be from incurred or escalated rentals over time. So if you're signing a 10-year lease and you've got an 8% or a 6% escalation, you are going to end up with a higher net income number, provided your costs are under control. And this is what we're seeing happening over time here, that the net income has landed higher in 2024 than what a non-certified building is. We see that filtering through then into your capital value per square meter, where we have higher values per square meter. I think Danie will talk to a little bit of cap rates when he goes into some of the slides later on, but we've also seen slightly lower cap rates on those certified, the non-certified buildings. And then last of all, but definitely not least, is that cost to income ratio. We spend a lot of time talking to our clients and to the markets around not only the rental side or the income side, but also around the cost side and management of costs and how is that best achieved. Now, we don't always find that in an absolute terms, your cost of your certified buildings is necessarily always lower, and there's lots of reasons that we can attribute to that. But what we need to be thinking about moreover is what your cost to income ratio is. So for every 100 Rand that you're earning, how much are you spending and how much are you putting in your back pocket? And that 39% versus 46% is a very big differential between that certified and non-certified. Danie, I'm going to hand back to you. And obviously we'll take questions on this when we get to that section of this presentation.
Eileen, thank you very much for that comprehensive talk about the exciting MSCI performance on green versus non-green. And those metrics that you've spoken about is exactly what we've used in our green building business case. That combined with a finding on the capex value that we've studied, that we've analyzed from or gained from our study itself. So if you look at part 4, deals with our proposed business case, or a business case for green building, to say, since we've done all this research on cost and MSCI has for many years been studying the performance of green buildings in operation, what does it mean, and can we actually make an independent or a business case that people can look to and can use? So if you look at investment and you look at commercial property investors, they have 2 main aims or objectives. Firstly, they need a dependable annual income stream that result in desirable return on investment from their buildings. And in the second instance, that's what Eileen also referred to, they need to manage the real estate assets and their risks to create solid asset capital growth over the medium to long term. So those are the main drivers of why people go for commercial property. And all of these things need to be operated within our planet and the finite resources we have. And we are all very well aware of global warming and the threat that's out there for us all. And that needs all of us as human beings to reconsider every aspect of our lives and our lifestyles. And the property sector or the construction industry have responded by creating the concept of green building and green building certification, green building councils, to help and guide and lead us towards a more environmentally friendly and sustainable built environment. But the question now needs to be answered is, what is the impact of all this and the green building and the implications of that? What is that? What does it hold for investors' objectives? So if we then go to our business case, we need to just unpack a few things and then we can delve into the actual calculations. The metrics we're going to use, or that we have used, was firstly the total capital outlay, or the TCO. Then we look at net operating income, NOI. Then we look at return on investment, ROI, first year return. And we also look at marginal return and capitalized value. We had to make some assumptions to make this business case work. And much like MSCI has done, we've assumed 2 illustrative buildings, both of them similar, of the similar design, like she said, premium A-grade office buildings, both of the same size. The only difference is the one has pursued in its design and construction certification with the GBCSA and is now a certified building, where the other one is a non-certified building, but it's like for like. You can compare them in every other instance. So we've built our case study on two office buildings, both of them 10,000 square meters construction area, of which the lettable area, the GLA, is 9,200 square meters. The estimated building cost for the non-certified building is 20,000 rand per square meter. It's just an assumption that we made, but it also ties in with the most recent information that we've gleaned from our green buildings that's applying for certification. So it's a realistic figure. And then we also, to try to keep it realistic, to add another 15% on top for land costs. Then we need to, after we've set the table, to say now we turn our focus on what has we got from our industry data. We've got, firstly, data from building, from this Green Building in South Africa Guide to Cost and Trends. That showed us that most recently, the green building cost premium, the green certified cost premium for office buildings, new office buildings, was only 2.4%, and we're going to use that in our business case. And then from MSCI, we've got a depth of industry data on the performance of green versus non-certified buildings. And what we're going to use there is, firstly, we're going to look at green certified office income premium of 31.4%. We're going to look in a second instance to the reduced green certified office vacancy that Eileen has already referred to, of 25%. That's how much green buildings have shown to be lowering, to be able to work with a lower vacancy rate. They are more fully occupied. Then we're going to look at the operational costs that Eileen also referred to. And the way we've used it here is one part of the picture, and which says that per square meter, the green buildings tend to be slightly more expensive than the non-certified buildings, to the extent of 11.5%. But like Eileen correctly indicated, if you look at operating costs as a percentage of net operating income, the cost as percentage of income is actually lower at 39% versus 46%. So there's two aspects to operating costs, and we can hopefully unpack that during our panel discussion later. But you'll see the 11.5% pop up when we look at net operating income. And then in the last instance, when you look at the capital value of what we have created, the cap rate or the capitalization rate, 36% basis points lower for green certified buildings at 8.58% compared to 8.94% for non-certified offices, which is an indicator of sort of the risk that valuers see in green versus non-certified buildings. All right, then we are ready to start talking through our discussions, and we start with what we normally do is how much does this thing cost. We look at the total capital outlay, or the TCO, of the study, and you'll see there's two columns there under office buildings, the non-certified versus the green certified. So our whole methodology will build through. On the left-hand side, we'll have the description of the cost or the income items, and then we'll see how it plays out for the non-certified compared to the green certified. So the first line item we need to look at is escalated building cost. And we said we're working with a 10,000 square meter building, and the base building, the non-certified building, costs 20,000 rand per square meter, giving us a building cost of 200 million rand. And we use the same figure for the green certified building, but we've realized and we've discovered now that that building actually costs a little more. And we added the 2.4% in the next line, the green cost premium of 2.4%. That works out to 4.8 million rand. So, and a marginal effect of 4.8 million in the last column. And the subtotal that you get, if you add those together, is that the non-certified building costs 200 million rand. The certified building costs 204,800,000 rand, with a marginal effect, or the difference between the two being 4.8 million rand. And we also said we're going to add another 15% for land, just to sort of make it, give it a realistic feel, as the building is not sort of hanging there in the air. We added another 15% or 30 million rand for the land value, and that gives us a total for the non-certified building of 230 million, a total TCO, and a total capital outlay for the certified building of 234,800,000. So just remember those figures, because we're going to come back to them 2 or 3 slides later. And for this one, on the income side, we'll have to sort of just work our way carefully through it. There's quite a lot to be said here, but the basic principle is the same. We have items that we work on the left, and towards the right, we'll see how the impact either on for the non-certified and the green certified building. So firstly, we're going to start with gross monthly income, including recoveries. That's what we got from MSCI data. It works off the lettable area, the GLA of these buildings of 9,200 square meters. The average rate we're working on there is 199.76 rand. And that for the non-certified building works out to 1.837 million rand per month on gross income. But before we've looked at vacancies, and we put the same value in there for the green certified. But then in the next line, we do make the adjustment because MSCI has reported an increase of 31.4%. If you compare certified with non-certified, so we add another 31.4% to the income, to the gross income, that is 577,067 rand. So if you add that together, the total of gross income before vacancies is 1.837 for non-certified compared to 2.414 million for the certified buildings. All right, then we are ready to look what is happening after we've applied vacancies. So the vacancy rate that MSCI gave us for non-certified buildings is 14.8%. So if you calculate the 14.8% of the gross income before vacancies, it gives you 271,993 rand that we have to subtract from the gross income. For certified buildings, it is actually the same percentage, but because you work off a high income of 2.4 million, it works out at a higher value of 357,000 rand. So we lose out due to our 14.8% vacancy. But the next item reminds us to say, but MSCI has found that these green buildings have actually 25% lower vacancies. That's what they typically occur. So you take that into account, and the 25% means we're going to reduce the 357,000 of vacancies by 89,350 rand, because that is typically to what extent green buildings outperform the non-certified buildings. And that gives us a new subtotal that we call the gross monthly income after vacancies now of 1.565 million for the non-certified compared to 2.146 million rand for the certified building, and a difference, a marginal effect of 581,000 rand between the two. What we then must still look at and address before we can look at net operating income is obviously our monthly operational costs. That works to the lettable area of the building of 9,200 square meters. The figures we have from MSCI is 91.83 rand. So for the non-certified building, that works out to 844,836 rand. We put in the same value because it's the same size building for the green building, the 844,836. But then we add, and there's the 11.45% that we've discussed in the previous slide. But actually, there was indications that it is more expensive per square meter. We're working on square meters here, per square meter for green buildings. So we deduct another 97,156,000 rand, which obviously penalized the income stream of the certified building. And then we are ready to add up again and get to a net monthly operational income of the two buildings. For the non-certified building, 720,963 rand compared to 1.204 million rand for the green certified building. But for first year return, we need to analyze that. So we times by 12, and that works out to a net operating income for the non-certified building of 8.651 million compared to 14.567 million rand for the certified building. And if you compare those two sets of figures and the marginal effect of 5.806 million rand, it's clear that if you calculate, the calculation shows that the green building outperforms the non-certified building by 67.1% on net operating income. And then we can get to our last slide, which is the first year return. And for first year return, we know we need net operating income and we need total capital outlay. We've, in the previous two slides, addressed those. The net operating income in the previous slide shows us 8.651 for the non-certified building compared to 14.457 million rand for the certified building. Two slides back, we had the total capital outlay of 230 million rand for the non-certified compared to 234,800,000 rand for the certified building. That gives a return on investment first year for the non-certified of 3.76% compared to 6.16% for the green certified building. indicating that the green certified building outperformed the non-certified building by 240 basis points or by 63.7%. The marginal effect on the return, you can see there, we required additional investment in to get our building green by 4.8 million rand, but we gained an increase in net operating income of 5.806 million. So actually our return on that 4.8 that we spent is no less than 120%. So if I'm an investor, I'll ask for even more of green investment, because that is a return that you can't sort of just smile at. It is quite significant, we think. And then the last slide, we just summarize our key findings, our key study results. The first one is in total capital outlay is 2.1%. It's up, it's slightly changed from the 2.4 because we had the land value at the same amount in there. Then gross income before vacancies is up by 31.4%. Gross income after vacancies is up by 37.1%. Net operating income is increased by 61.7%. Return on investment is up by 240 basis points. Marginal return 120.96%, and capitalized value up by 74.1%. And that brings us to the end of this talk. Not for the presentation side of it. There's very interesting stuff still coming up, but it's my opportunity to say thank you. Thank you for the team that joined me here. Thank you for the World Green Building Council that gives us this platform to share this good news with you. So thank you for everyone in the audience that have joined this morning, and hopefully there will be some good questions coming through. And from my side at this stage, and I've said it before, this is not a single study. This is a study by a group of people, so it belongs to us all. Thank you very much for each of you that over the last 10 and 12 years have assisted and will continue to assist the study and to the good work that we are able to show the world that actually green building can do well while it's doing good as well. Anelisa, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Danie, and thanks, Eileen, for the presentation and unpacking those results. And it's good to see that over time, this green cost premium is actually decreasing, which makes certified office developments more accessible to the market. I think Eileen mentioning that brokers are starting to say that it's an easier deal for them to make if the building is certified, definitely helps, especially in a very competitive office market. But let's get to the panel. Allow me to welcome our panelists. Starting with Georgina. Georgina, if you could please switch on your camera. Georgina Smit is the head of technical at the Green Building Council of South Africa, or the GBCSA. She oversees certification and research-related products that drive the property sector to design, build, and operate buildings in a more sustainable way. She manages the technical team at the GBCSA, who are responsible for independently certifying green and net zero buildings and identifying market leaders. Her daily responsibilities include driving market transformation through certification, which can verify tangible, quantifiable impacts, and providing customer-focused technical support to all stakeholders engaging with the GBCSA, both in the private and public sector. And then we will reintroduce Eileen. Eileen, if you wouldn't, you've already got your camera on, never mind. Eileen's role at the MSCI provides her with a unique perspective of real estate investment strategy and portfolio optimization. Now, as vice president at the MSCI, Eileen has experience working with both South African and multinational real estate funds gathered from her 16 years at the MSCI, previously the IPD, both in South Africa and in London. She holds a degree in mathematics and human geography from Wits University. Eileen believes that the numbers tell the real story, and that makes for better investment decisions. And introducing Julie. Julie, if you wouldn't mind turning on your camera. In her role, Julie drives the World Green Building Council's sustainable finance agenda, building on the expertise and experience from green building councils and partners in our network to drive industry and policy action at a global scale. Julie has studied and worked at the nexus of finance, research, and policy. Before joining the World Green Building Council, Julie worked in leading climate policy think tanks, particularly on sectoral transformations, sustainable finance, and sustainable development goals. When Julie shuts off her computer, she enjoys the analog world with friends, sports, food, and a little bit of local green politics. For several weeks a year, you will find her near the French Atlantic coast. All right, so we've made the introductions. Everyone's got their cameras on. Guys, this is what I'd like to call the Justice League of green buildings. And let's get to the panel discussion. And Danie, I'm going to start with you. The first question that comes to mind, this research is focused on new office developments, but new office developments have slowed down due to the oversupply of office space in the local market, although refurbs obviously remain necessary for existing offices to remain competitive and attract quality tenants. Will the study be extended to other asset classes over time, or will it continue to focus on office developments?
Thank you, Annelies. Yes, I think it's very important that we keep focusing and looking at the bigger picture and don't just sort of delve on what we've been doing because we like it so much. What we will be doing is to continue on this study of office buildings and to continue the trend. But there has definitely been new studies that we've started already. We are busy at the moment with the GBCSA working on the cost of net zero buildings, net zero certifications, and not necessarily office buildings only. And it will, I'm pretty sure, transform and proceed towards net positive buildings as well. We've also started on, and it's a bit of a difficult animal to get hold of, but the existing buildings, like you correctly say, maybe only 5% of our buildings can be classified as new. The rest is already out there, and we've got to address them as well. So we've started the study on the cost of existing building performance and how much that will be, and I think that's an important study. And then there's also interest shown, and I've been approached by people from the retail sector, and also from industry, from the industrial sector, that we've got to start looking at those buildings as well. It's mostly a case of data because the methodology is there, the intent is there, but you're quite right, the whole world doesn't exist out of office buildings only. It was simply that in the beginning, the bulk of the certifications that come across our path was office buildings, and that's what we started on. We'll continue with that, but it has to, and it is already expanding.
Okay, good. Thank you very much, Danie. Eileen, let's talk about the average green cost premium, which has been identified as 2.4%. Some developers could argue that they are under pressure to lower development costs as far as possible. So the 2.4% premium itself could be seen as unmanageable, especially for developments that are undertaken in areas that require additional costs, for example, heightened security or higher transportation costs. So taking a longer term view, however, how do you think certifications typically impact the operating costs and returns of an office or a retail building according to the MSCI Annual Green Property Index?
So thanks, Anelisa. Operating costs are often a tricky one and up for debate when we talk about green certified buildings versus non-green certified buildings. And what muddies the water a little bit is, and I'm just talking to the numbers for a moment before I really answer your question, is how much of the building gets used. So when you have a lower vacancy in a building, as we do at the moment for the green certified buildings, that building is had a bigger occupation, and therefore often comes with higher costs in those buildings. So we've looked at many of so within the MSCI data, we look at about 16, we take the income statement and we map that into 16 different cost codes, and then we go into the detail of every single one of those cost codes, and we've looked at, well, what overall then might be the reason for those higher green certified buildings. And some of the things are rates and taxes plays a big part. When you have a higher value per square meter, you're going to pay higher rates and taxes. And unfortunately, that does penalize a green building. So there are some of, and one of the other, it's a smaller cost, but it's certainly there. It is TIs and letting fees and commissions. So when you're letting more of those buildings out, you have to be putting those pins into spaces. You've got to be paying the brokers that are doing those lettings. So all of that stuff kind of rolls up into a slightly higher overall cost per square meter when we look at the whole building. Having said that, though, I think, and that's why we come back to your cost to income ratio, and it is so important that you are able to drive a higher income, because what you want the guys, to get back to your question, when you're developing that asset, you're not just developing that asset to lower your costs today. You're developing that asset to get a better cost to income ratio over a long period of time. So a sustainable cost to income ratio, even if in an absolute rand per square meter number, you might be running it a little bit higher. If you can charge your tenant a little bit more because that building is more sustainable and the tenant will be able to operate better out of your certified building, that's what you're looking for over a longer period of time. So unfortunately, we are in a world with massive cost pressures at the moment. You know, capital is still expensive, construction costs are high. So, you know, these margins are very, very tight, but we still need to keep that sort of way of thinking of we're looking at this over, we're developing buildings not for today, but we're doing it for longer periods. And so that green certification impacts over a longer period of time as well.
Great, Eileen. Thank you so much for contextualizing that. But Georgina, I want you to weigh in on the question of costs, because the results of the study indicate that the average green building cost premium for new green certified office developments is 2.4%, but 6-star rated developments carry an average cost premium of 9.39%, which is a significant jump from 4- and 5-star rated buildings. Why do you think there is a higher cost premium for office developments that aim for a higher level of certification? Are there other operational factors, for example, the building typology or the tenant preferences, that could influence that cost premium and not just the level of certification?
Thank you, Anelisa, and hi to everybody on the call. So definitely, I think it would make sense for a 6-star building to demand a higher premium in comparison to a 4 or a 5-star. And really, what that 6-star is saying, we formally communicate to the market that it equates to world leadership, but it is saying that it's got a higher level of sustainability performance as a building when you're comparing it to its peers in the market and in comparison to a 5 or a 4-star. So 4-star is associated with industry best practice, whereas 5-star is associated with South African leadership and excellence. And then, like I said, a 6-star building is a really innovative building, but it is basically saying to the South African market, this building is operating in comparison and on an equal footing to its global peers. And we can see in our data the majority of the buildings are sitting at that 4-star scale level. It's only, I think, about 5% of the profile and of the projects that have been certified to date that have achieved 6 stars in the South African market. I've worked on quite a few of those before joining the GBCSA, and I mean, I think, to answer your question with kind of, first-hand experience, it makes sense because you're trying to look at sustainability across a much broader range. So yes, you're looking at good things like energy and water, but you're also looking at things like biodiversity or going into specifics with materials, or you're looking at your contractor and how are they managing that site from an environmental perspective and how they're being responsible. So, you're looking at things like supply chain transformation as well. So just, aiming higher means sometimes that you will be implementing initiatives that really do go beyond business as usual and that are industry standard, and those would have a cost associated with them. But I think it's also worth noting that sometimes we have also seen projects come through that are 6-star that are not demanding that high premium, and then you get a few really special 4-star buildings that come through, but they've got special site conditions or unique site conditions that actually end up being quite costly in order to kind of achieve and pursue sustainability initiatives. So like with most things in life, if you're aiming higher and it's not business as usual, you can assume that cost would be correlated in a positive direction. But I think in terms of things over and above the excellent study that Danie and the University of Pretoria has done, where we've identified quite a few features that would affect costs, I think one of the big things is, and certainly from my experience, but it's also from any kind of green building 101 basics, and all the green building consultants on the call will understand this. It's around the timing that you get a sustainability consultant on board. So if it's the kind of project where nobody is really interested in green, and it's an afterthought, and a consultant is brought in once the architect has already designed everything, and there's not really much room for change, and then somebody's got to try and add sustainability ideas and kind of mold the project at a very late stage. I think that is where unnecessary costs then can sometimes have to be incurred in order to achieve or maintain a certain sustainability level. So it's really, really important to get your sustainability consultant and your green building consultant on board from the get-go. One of the best projects I ever worked on, we were appointed with the project manager as we weren't a principal agent, but fundamentally supported driving that vision of the client brief to set the sustainability goals that then inform the architectural design and the mechanical services responses, and the technical responses. And you eliminate a lot of costs there because sustainability is embedded within the concept of the project. Key to that is also how are you, particularly with new buildings, and we've got about between Green Star and Edge, we've got about 430 buildings that have baked sustainability into their design. When you bring the right team on board, the right architect, mechanical engineer, your building services, and ideally a facade engineer, when you bring the right team on board and you approach it in the right way from an integrated design or a holistic approach, and you really optimize a lot of your passive design features so that you can minimize your plant and your kind of mechanical services that need to then support certain levels, that's another key element in terms of bringing costs down. And I think a lot of the green building consultants in our space really understand that, and professionals that work on a lot of green projects get it, but it's definitely not standard practice in South Africa yet.
Great, thank you very much, Georgina. So let's go further afield. A lot of real estate funds in South Africa have offshore investments. And so this kind of research is not only relevant in the South African context, which Julie then brings me to you. I'm sure asset owners and green building councils in other jurisdictions are also grappling with quantifying the cost of green for new developments, which should also be understood in the context of very stringent regulations, such as the European Union taxonomy, which sets certain parameters for what constitutes a green building. So how does this kind of research help asset owners, green building councils, and policymakers quantify the business case for green new developments, and how could it impact the future of the international green building movement?
Yes, thank you, Anelisa, for the question. So I think, first of all, I'll maybe go back to a publication that the World Green Building Council put out, I think only 2-3 years ago, or 3 or 4 years ago, that was called Beyond the Business Case, where we were unpacking the extra value that comes through constructing green buildings. I think just in these 3-4 years, we've seen so much progress on the kind of information and data, hardcore data and evidence on that increased value, as we've seen here at the beginning of the webinar through the research undergone on commercial real estate in South Africa. So we have increasingly really that's hard evidence from across the globe on basically the extra cost of doing green business and constructing green being outweighed a lot by the additional value. And just a few months ago, we also had the Asia Pacific Network looking at Singapore and Hong Kong specifically, and they've also gathered a lot of data similarly to done in this research piece. And they have also, again, proved that the business case for green building is there through lower vacancy rates, higher market value. I think, similar approach, of course, to the study seen here. And this is, again, just one of the examples. you can go on our website. All these resources are available there. So I'm coming back to your question on what does this kind of new research imply for the international movement? Well, it just strengthens the case more and more over time, and it's really shifting so rapidly. And since we've now realized that our latest publication on the business case for green buildings is already very outdated, we're already planning to do an update of that and really collect as much evidence as possible. And this is where this type of research is so important, to really show that this is a global trend. So this is specifically on the business case. Then if you look at policy, this is of course also quickly moving, and basically climate change risk is increasingly also seen as financial risk. And this is where you see increasingly financial regulators actually moving in the space. I could give a lot of examples, but I'm based in Germany, so in Europe. And for example, the European Central Bank has now developed a new indicator on climate change, which means that even from the bankers, or the central bankers, there is pressure to correctly value real estate assets, assets in general, but of course also real estate assets. So you have also that pressure to rethink, the business case, the market value of assets with the integration of climate change risks. Then maybe another example that you also see increasingly across different markets is moving building codes and energy policy. This type of research really shows that putting more ambitious building codes in place or energy standards is more feasible than maybe previously thought, or some actors that may be against this type of policy move, then you have evidence-based policy making that is enabled through just that the numbers written down based on sound research. So we see in increasingly a lot of jurisdictions these energy standards moving. So you could actually lose the license to do business if you don't build green or renovate your assets. I think I'll leave it at that, but there is, of course, more to unpack. Thanks.
100%, Julie. Thank you so much. Guys, in the interest of time, I'm going to jump to Q&A. So how I'm going to do it, I'm going to look at what's in the chat, starting from the top and going downwards. I'll take 3 questions at a time and field them to the relevant panelists. And as they are answering the questions, please do use the chat. Anything that we can't get to in this webinar, we'll do our best to circle back to you afterwards. Let's start with the first question from Manfred. Hi, Manfred. How can we make this material part of mandatory professional, this being, of course, the cost of green, etc., material part of mandatory professional training for all QSs and development managers? We still have way too many of these professionals that say that certified green buildings cost too much and therefore don't target this. Maybe ASAQS can make some recommendations. Danie, would you be comfortable taking this question? And then we've got a second question from Manfred. The business case is fantastic, payback in less than a year. Can we also include a business case for the developer that sells the property after construction, either as a whole or sectional title? I think I'm going to give that to Danie and Eileen. So if both of you could weigh in on that, that'd be great. And then the third question from Daniel: what is the average rental per square meter rate for a non-certified building as compared to a green certified office building? I'm going to give that one to Eileen. So do you guys want to kick off? Danie, I'll start with you.
Thank you, Annelies. Yes, Manfred, thank you. Good for you to join us and for the question. I think I fully support you that this data is important for us. It's important going forward. It should be a mandatory part of training. I'll talk to my peers on the council or on the board for the ASAQS as well. I've obviously been sharing this data with my own students at the University of Pretoria, I'm not sure how much of that has ended up being taught and being part of in the curriculum of other places. But I agree with you fully that we should do it. Now, and I'm pretty sure that because of the close relationship between the ASAQS and the different institutions that train quantity surveyors, it will not be difficult to, if asked and explained the context of it, that it be integrated in the learning material. But fully support you on that.
Okay, great.
Maybe I can just, sorry, Georgina, just Anelisa weighing in on that answer. I think, you know, our data is growing all the time. So we've started covering retail recently. In the last sort of 2 years, we published this year on retail. We've also got a lot of underlying data on industrial assets. We can't quite publish that yet just because of our own confidentiality constraints. And we're looking at resi all the time. So we also can look at the data in different locations and look at it in different sort of ways. So we can slice and dice. And I think now that Danie has set the precedent for what a business case can look like, we can start looking at different scenarios and seeing how that can possibly play out. So I think there's a lot that can be done in this space, and it'll be very, very interesting as you play around with the model and use different variables.
Okay, great. And maybe Eileen, before we move away from you, I mean, maybe just a question, or Manfred's question regarding the business case for the developer that sells the property post-construction, either as a single building or as a sectional title.
So I think there's definitely a business case for that, because your developer's always going to want to sell at the premium, whatever premium, the best premium they can probably have on their building costs. I think most generally those developers, the guys who are buying those assets are either your listed funds or your life and pension funds, who many of them have made commitments to ESG or some kind of green target. So they're going to be wanting to buy an asset that fits within that sort of sphere or that realm. So your developer can't discount it only on price. They need to be thinking about the saleability then of those assets over a period of time, and whether or not it's going to tick other boxes outside of just price. I mean, the market's a bit difficult at the moment, but, you know, we need to think more broadly.
100%. And I mean, property is a long-term asset class, right? If you're not thinking broadly, then you probably missed the trick. And maybe just a 30-second answer to the question, what is the average rental square meter rate for a non-certified versus a green certified office building?
Gosh, I'd have to look that up. So maybe I can come back to that number. I don't have that off the top of my head.
Okay, so Eileen's going to call a friend. She's going to use her Who Wants to Be a Millionaire options. And while that's happening, we do have another question. Danie, maybe answer this one. Are you looking to do a study on renovated office buildings as well?
Yes, like I've said before, existing buildings, that's what I take it to be renovated, because if you have an existing building that's not sustainable, you sort of kind of had to renovate it to approach the Green Building Council and say, I want the EBP certification on the building. So we've started with that and unpacked that one. It is slightly more complex simply because you start from different angles. New office buildings is all like for like. It's the same thing. You start at the brownfield, the groundfield side, and all the things that normally goes into an office building is there because it's all new built. Existing buildings, now you have anything thrown in the mix, and we probably will have the same type of findings that we have here, but categorized into 4, 5, 6 categories. I'm actually about to call my good friend Georgina, and so I need to come sit with her in Cape Town and look at their database and then strategize. But I don't think the study will get off the ground unless we make a meaningful categorization of what does it look, because those existing buildings definitely don't look all the same. So you'll have to sort of try and see if you can work with 5 or 6 typically categories, and then you can broadly fit the whole scope of the portfolio in there somewhere. But the study I've started, it is very necessary. I know the GBCSA on my back somehow on this. So it is outstanding. It is just slightly more difficult to get hold of, but I think we're making progress now.
Okay, excellent. I've got a question from Milna, and I'm not quite sure what it means. But Georgina, I'm going to give it to you while we're waiting for Milna to just clarify. The question is, do you have any data on increase in plant size for net zero buildings. So I'm going to take a leap of faith and assume we're talking about net zero carbon buildings, and I'm going to take another leap of faith to say maybe we're also referring to any increase in costs for net zero certified buildings. So Georgina, you might not have that data on hand, but maybe just speaking to the theme more generally.
Oh, fine, thanks, Anelisa. And we can actually speak to this through the cost of green results. And it's one of the things that we investigate, even though it's not linked directly to net zero buildings. But what Danie has done in kind of dissecting the data and slicing it up in different ways is we asked, well, where is this cost going to? And what we did is we divided all the kind of impact areas that a building can look at. So if you look at energy, if you look at water, if you look at kind of management procedures, and the cost allocation, that 2.4% or whatever it is for the time period being assessed is then broken down. And in effect, when you're dealing with the net zero carbon building, you're going to be looking at your energy impact design features. So, and it wouldn't necessarily always be linked directly to plant size, but definitely plant value. Depending on what kind of HVAC system, design you've included. But importantly, the facade would then also play a role. And then, what we found coming through the costs is there's a category called IEQ, which stands for Indoor Environmental Quality, which is green speak for basically saying, how do you create a healthy building? Because a big part of green buildings is how do you make them healthy? But often there's an energy trade-off between making them healthy and then needing energy to make them, to bring in fresh air and then condition it. The interplay between letting in lots of natural daylight, but that obviously also brings in heat gains. So then you maybe want, kind of motorized blind systems that have got sensors in them that know when to come down. So that is always an energy trade-off that project teams, have to make, and consultants will have different strategies. I know when we were a consultant, there were one or two credits that we knew we would never go for because we knew the energy hit would be so high. And the energy and that category actually bring in, the biggest costs, and that would be linked to plant size. So I think that there is some data for you, or plant value, sorry, not plant size. There would be some data there for you to play around with. Danie, just in terms of the net zero study that you're busy working on, I mean, are we bringing in any kind of plant size metrics or looking at that in any detail?
We do the same analysis as we do for the current study on office buildings. We analyze it to the categories that's used. It definitely shows energy and to some extent IEQ. That's where the money for net zero typically goes, but we must remember those buildings are all 6-star in any case. So it's not like you can generalize to say all net zero buildings will look exactly like that. It's lifestyle type buildings and it's all 6-star. So, but yeah, we do analyze the same metrics that we do for offices as well.
Great. We've got a question from Peter who says, well, it's not a question, it's more a comment. Developers and clients need to see evidence that the 2.4% extra over for a green building will be recouped through higher values in rental revenue. I'm going to give that to Eileen, and then I'm going to give Eileen a second question from N. Mbele. Hi there, question for Eileen. Have you seen an increase in insurance premiums for certified properties? And I think, Julie, if you're comfortable to also maybe talk about insurance trends in response to climate risk and certifications overseas, I think that could be quite useful as well. So Eileen, then Julie, go.
So to answer the first question, you're absolutely right. It is a tricky one. It's a tricky one because in the current market, particularly in the office current market, driving or demanding a higher rental number for anything is quite tricky. Okay, yes. We are in a subdued office market, and so, the focus is on letting out space rather than driving a higher rental. Okay, and I'm speaking very, very broadly. Maybe if you're in the Cape Town market or if you're in certain nodes, that wouldn't be the case. So so your rental would be driven then by your ability to derive the higher rental is driven by market conditions. Having said that, though, when we look at our study, and I just checked on the numbers now while we were speaking, we are finding that your base rental per square meter for a P&A grade office certified building is 144 Rand, and it's about 110 Rand for a non-certified building. So that's to say, so there is a big rental differential. Now, that is not an asking rental, that is an achieved rental over time. So that also factors in your escalation of that rental over the period of the lease. So if you're signing a 10-year lease with your tenant, you might be asking the same rental on day one. Okay, so you might not be getting a premium in the current market, but you're able to sign a longer lease with a higher escalation, you will end up with a higher rental at the end of the day. And I'd say that's why we're talking about thinking about things over longer time periods, because it's not just about what you're able to do on the day you sign your lease, but in the full period of that lease actually matters as well. Okay, so I'd like to answer that question in that sort of way. So developers, we need to think about things not just for today, but what you would do that building over time. The other question, just to answer quickly around the insurance costs, we found those insurance costs are marginally higher. Again, I think that has got to do with, and this sounds a bit weird, but around the amount of, the occupancy of those buildings. When you have fully let buildings, you need more security in those buildings, and it comes with higher costs and security and insurance of what's in the building itself. When that buildings are more empty, again, not so much. So we are seeing a little bit, but I just want to say in general, insurance costs have gone up across our market, across all property types massively over the last few years. So yeah, it's just something that is notable to think about.
Yeah, I mean,
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, so I mean, I was trying to wrap my head around the question. Is the assumption that insurance premiums increase for certified properties because they have higher value? That, yes, I mean, that is possible. And I think, though, that shouldn't be the case in a way, because what we also see on the other hand is that green buildings, and there's been research also looking at how building codes that have kind of higher ambition reduce the costs of the buildings, so and also therefore increase or decrease the risk of these buildings. For example, when it comes to the resilience of the buildings compared to natural catastrophe. So there's also counter evidence that green buildings actually have lower risk and therefore should have lower insurance premiums. And if I can then now bring some trends that we are aware of at the global level, is that the cost of the damage from extreme weather events has really high impact on buildings and infrastructure, of course. And natural disasters are quickly spiraling from year to year. You can see the numbers going up from the numbers disclosed by the insurance companies. And in the past 3 to 4 years, there's been more than $100 billion every year in insurance loss. That is more than ever before. And that can also then have an impact, of course, of the insurance premiums, because the more you have insurance companies having to pay for damages to buildings and infrastructure, the more they put the premiums up. There's also evidence, like in California and Florida, and I'm sure there are other places out there that are uninsurable. So the insurance premiums are so high because these are areas that are prone to natural catastrophe over and over again. And therefore, the insurance companies are pulling out their insurance services. So there's also a really big dark number, of course, when you look at insurance, because a lot of buildings and infrastructure aren't being insured at the moment, and especially in emerging markets where the impact of climate change is sometimes even more severe. So there's that big dark number as well on the insurance costs. So coming back to the question on, is there an increase in insurance premiums for green buildings? I think it could be in, I can't guarantee that this is not happening, but in theory and looking at the bigger scale, it should be the exact opposite.
Can I just comment on that, Julia? I couldn't agree with you more, and I think it should be the exact opposite. I think sadly in South Africa, we're not just recognizing that in those insurance premiums, this mitigation of physical risk. And I think maybe the work that we need to do, certainly as MSCI, but as an industry, is draw a line between climate risk and the physical risk posed on properties, and how green buildings and green certifications on buildings actually do mitigate that physical risk. And is that being factored in? I don't know that that's maybe happening a little bit more globally, but I'm not sure that that's happening here as much. So, I mean, that's more of my opinion rather than answering any question.
100%. And I think the more you guys talk, the more I keep thinking to myself, I'm going to have to do a pilgrimage to the insurers so I can hear it from the horse's mouth. And boy, am I not looking forward to it.
Good luck.
But it almost goes to show, right, that this is a multifaceted issue. And looking at one prism of values, such as rental, for example, might not be the way to look at it. You also have to look at the extent to which you can also mitigate these longer term risks, especially, Julie, as you correctly say, in uninsurable areas. So let me switch over to, in fact, I'm going to stay with you, Eileen. This is from Danie. Does the research show differences in performance within the different regions in South Africa? i.e., is the uptake of green buildings evenly spread, or are there hotspots of activity, etc.? And then I'm going to pull another question. Okay, the guys in the chat, there's a whole bunch of homework for you guys. You guys need to do the readings, get the knowledge, and use it when you're talking to your C-suite, please. Then we've got another question from Alana. Sorry, I can't see the full name. And the question is, agree the business case looks great based on cost to income ratio. Would you be able to also include a business case for government buildings that are leased by the Department of Public Works to client departments and where the rental income does not play a role? I'm tempted to give this to Georgina and Eileen. So Eileen, you answer the one question, and then I'm going to ask you both to answer this question in terms of Department of Public Works. Georgina, I know you have a very soft spot there. And let's just go with those questions and then take it from there.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe Georgina can also weigh in on this, but certainly what we, in our data, the green certifications do tend to be more focused around your office nodes or your high-end office nodes in the big city. So locations like Sandton and Rosebank, you might look at Umhlanga in Durban, and then sort of Cape Town, sort of that Claremont kind of area and CBD and so on. So certainly when we look at offices, it is located into areas where tenants demand those kinds of buildings more so. And the owners of those buildings also have been more open to green certifications for whatever reason. So there is a geographical split in that. Let me hand over to Georgina.
Yes, no, and I would agree with Eileen. Definitely, at the moment, where we see the most, green building activity that's publicized and that's, part of our certification profile, definitely within Gauteng, Cape Town, and Durban, in terms of the metros, and they would be across, not just the CBDs. So in terms of offices, we typically, kind of green building. Certification started in 2009. We now also have, big things in kind of neighborhood malls and retail centers, and also in industrial kind of nodes, which would be more on the periphery or in industrial zones within those metros. And then obviously a big rise in green homes in South Africa, but more multi, not like single homes in the suburbs, but more multi-unit residential spaces with, developers like Bowen or IHS, as examples, and those are also more dispersed out of the city centre. But I think to the question, we don't want to leave any building behind in South Africa, and we know that the climate change impacts that have been modelled for the thresholds that we've already exceeded, right? So we've got to be designing buildings right now, if we are responsible developers and if we're financing things responsibly, for people to be able to cope with the climate change that is already coming. It's not even a kind of idea of if, it's just when. And so they're great partners in the space, whether it's the IFC, whether it's the banks, who are really trying to grow an understanding of green buildings and what it can mean for you as a user of that building, or if you're an owner of that building with time to come. But yes, we still need to grow that monumentally outside of the metros, to kind of get to that level of scale and market penetration to make a difference.
Great.
I'm just thinking, what was the second question was around
yes.
Yes, no, thank you, Alana, and great. We've had these discussions with some government departments already, and that is exactly the point. It's like, what is in effect the business case or the commercial case for heavily investing in green for government buildings that are in effect never going to be sold. And I think there are two arguments, and we are engaging with different, whether it's departments at national or provincial or at local scale. There's one around how, when buildings are managed well, particularly when you look at a broad range of sustainability features. So yes, it would be energy and water. That's always where you want to start. But it would also be looking at things like, are you looking at your air quality? Are you looking at how you're providing good quality water to the people in the office? Are you thinking about, the cleaning products that you're using? Are you thinking about how access to public transport is being supported within the building periphery? Those all, at the end of the day, land up speaking to a better quality building, right? And that means that you are retaining value, with as an asset for government, which then, if one day does need to be sold, is retained. And we know that we have seen we have examples of government buildings that are shockingly maintained, and in effect would either need to be totally retrofitted. So there's something around maintenance and also contributing to a better quality space. But then also in terms of those utility bills that government is paying, whether it's a rental or whether it's your own utility bill that you're paying, the argument for the energy and water, if operated correctly, is a strong one, particularly when we know that 30% or the tariffs increase that are being currently debated are going to come into play on already expensive cases. I think you also then have an issue within Gauteng, where there are a lot of government buildings, and also speaking to social services like schools or hospitals. But how are you making sure that you've got running water in the taps or the toilets to make sure that building is still legally allowed to be open so that people can do their jobs? So there is a different argument, and you're quite right in saying that not all of the investment metrics are applicable to government, but I think that there are still sound commercial arguments that can be made within the government building space.
Great. And I see that Manfred has also weighed in on that. Thank you very much, Manfred, as always. Guys, I'm going to give one more question, and then I want us to make closing statements. The closing statements need to be a crisp 60-second mic drop. It's a mic drop, not a lecture. Okay. But Georgina, this one is right in your wheelhouse. It's from Ompeme. It was a master's student at the University of Botswana. He's doing his thesis or doing their thesis. And sees that in Southern Africa, most countries like Namibia and use the South African Green Building Council for green certifications. And I think he just wants to know why is that the case? At what level is the green building concept in this region? And how reliable are the sustainable green building materials that I presume are being used as part of the certified buildings? Maybe just give us a 2-minute overview, and then we'll get to closing statements.
Great, thanks, Anelisa. So, in terms of the green building movement in South Africa and Africa, it started with Green Star, and the GBCSA has got the license to support other African GBCs with certifying any building with Green Star in South Africa, and we've certified across the African continent. Recently, done some great buildings in Botswana as well, and we offer that support to all other African GBCs, whether it's training their team members up so that they can then offer that training, whether it's offering support to the projects. But it comes from a space of saying, we're in this together, we want to grow this for our continent together. How do we support you? We've already got something here. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. How do we share lessons learned? But obviously we also certify with EDGE, and we certify throughout the African continent. I was recently in Nairobi in Kenya, where we're busy certifying some projects there. So, we're able to support any African GBC and African projects with the appropriate solutions for their project size and their project budgets. So definitely happy to support on that if you would like to open up a further discussion. And then in terms of sustainable materials and alternative building materials, yes, great potential in Africa, particularly around developing, kind of green economy supply chains that can generate great jobs. We're unfortunately not seeing it at the level of scale that we need to be seeing it. So the opportunity is being missed, I would, argue as an opinion. So great potential, lots of pilot projects. We need to see more things available in Builders Warehouse that are competing and cost competitive products.
Okay, thank you very much, Georgina. Guys, 60 seconds or less, closing statements, and then I need to read a bunch of ads. Eileen, over to you.
Thanks very much, Anelisa. I think just in closing, there's this ongoing commitment from MSCI that we will continue to do this research and expand it as the market grows. We take very much an investor perspective, so we are trying or working with the investment community along with the valuation community to help them understand what the premium can be on their green certified buildings. And we'll continue to do that work. I think one of the things that we're working with quite a lot is the valuation community and the understanding around risk premiums that are embedded in valuation. So watch the space.
Excellent. Julie, last thoughts?
Yes, thank you. Well, I think, again, coming from an international or global perspective, you can really see the business case moving rapidly over the last years. And we've been putting out thought leadership pieces on, changing business case for years. But now you can really see the hard evidence increasingly all over the globe. So I think that basically going green in a way in the building sector is about future-proofing your business, future-proofing your investments. If you don't do it, you will sooner than later, have higher costs, lose your kind of license to do business, not be compliant with also increasingly shifting the policy landscape. So I think the sooner the better.
100%. And Danie?
Thank you. From my side, yes, very much in line with what the others have said. I think we need to knuckle down. The job is not done. There's a lot of good work being done and a lot of good figures coming to the fore that we can convey the message. And like Eileen said, the investment community need to keep on hearing this until we've convinced them. But like Manfred also said, we need to keep to the young people and make sure that the young people moving into the industry is converted already. They don't need conversion anymore. So we need to continue with this, but it's also like I think at the back of the booklet, the actual booklet, there's a reference from Lisa from the GBCSA. The building is not is now. So the building itself can't just green the whole world. We've got to use the tool to do the building as a tool. But education and communication is vital for facility management people, for tenants, for all of us. It's a combined effort. To get us to the other side.
Great. Thank you so much, Danie. Georgina?
Anelisa, thank you. I think firstly, I just want to say I'm really proud of the research, and a massive thank you to Danie, who's done all of the hard work in terms of processing. He's a real champion for this, and it's been a long journey that we've walked with the University of Pretoria and ASAQS, and I think it's an excellent example of built environment professionals providing data that's actually relevant to industry and that can be used by decision makers. And I think that to be a part of that, everybody on the call, because we're all part of this community, can be proud of themselves that we've got something like that going in South Africa. And then I think, yes, the cost of green, always going to be a big topic, which is why we are so dedicated to unpacking it and exploring and growing, and we will continue. And having partners like MSCI and UP and ASAQS really help us answer that question for the GBCSA members. I think my parting thought to everybody is, yes, green can sometimes cost more, but fundamentally, with time to come, what is it going to cost you if you don't go green? Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Georgina. And as the host, I get the last word. I think there's a broader thing to consider here, that by 2030, regulators and markets will expect new developments in major cities to achieve net zero carbon emissions. So this research, in my mind, is a great way of encouraging the sector to be bold on buildings, which I believe is the theme for the World Green Building Week. You're welcome, Julie. And guys, let's start planning and preparing ourselves, because the economy is transitioning towards a lower carbon state of things. Thank you so much, Eileen, Georgina, Julie, Danie, Nolubabalo, and of course, all of our guests for joining us this morning. Just a reminder that the 18th Green Building Convention is taking place on the 11th to the 13th of November 2025 at the Century City Conference Center in Cape Town. Feel free to reach out to the team regarding attendance, exhibition, or sponsorship opportunities, and we look forward to seeing you there. Then on another note, continuing the tradition of providing real-world tools to manage sustainability, the GBCSA would also like to invite you all to the next GBCSA online masterclass, Discover the Future, Embodied Carbon, the Next Frontier, with Professor Francesco Pomponi, the Chair of Sustainability and Environment at the University of York. The session will be held on the 2nd of October. Thank you very much, everyone, and until next time, goodbye.